Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're plunging straight into a mythic, deeply psychological dark fable. We're going to explore a massive, profound philosophical clash between two immense archetypes, the sovereign and the soothsayer. It's a story about raw ambition, the crushing weight of despair, and a startling revelation about how pity secretly disguises nihilism as virtue. Seriously, if you've ever felt totally exhausted by your own ambitions before you even started a project, well, we're going to reveal exactly why that happens. Let's dive in.
Let's set a slightly chilling tone right out of the gate by introducing our antagonist, the soothsayer. Just look at his words here. He doesn't arrive as some screaming monster swinging a sword demanding your submission. No way. Instead, he's this gentle, patient, almost sorrowful force waiting quietly in the dark. He arrives the way rot arrives in grain. It's a slow agreement reached before you even realize a bargain is being struck. He weaponizes this fatalistic arithmetic of loss, presenting a terrifying logic that seems almost impossible to argue against. But to really get how this guy operates, we first need to understand where he lives.
Chapter I: The Vacuum and the Voices.
Our story kicks off in a bleak, desolate setting. Das geistige Vakuum, or the spiritual vacuum. Think of this as the echoing, existential emptiness left behind after the death of the old gods and old certainties. Now, what's really fascinating here is that inside this void, the soothsayer isn't bringing you a new religion or a grand new prophecy. He is literally just the echo this vacuum makes when a voice of hope is spoken into it. He is the personification of the void itself, just feeding on the emptiness. So how exactly does he capture the travelers who wander in?
Chapter 2: The Gentle Trap of Pity. The soothsayer absolutely does not capture strong travelers with brute force. His art is way more subtle. He uses Mitleid, which translates to pity. But this isn't genuine empathy, okay? It is compassion completely misused as a psychological trap for those achieving greatness. See, the soothsayer uses the genuine distress of the higher man, the person striving and struggling for greatness, as bait. He knows that feeling deep sorrow for another's suffering feels like a profound moral good. It slips right past your mental defenses because it's wearing the mask of absolute virtue.
The text from the Marginalia Vatticini illustrates this danger so brilliantly. Pity is exactly where nihilism goes to hide from its own name. The soothsayer knows he can't just argue a strong-willed person out of their drive to succeed. But he can use their own goodness against them. By asking them to sit in the mud out of love for the suffering, he completely halts their upward climb.
This downward pull actually has a specific name, Der Geist der Schwere, or the spirit of gravity. It represents a very specific type of heavy nihilism. It doesn't ask you to become a bad person or to stop caring about the world. Instead, it insists that your caring must collapse into preemptive grief before the outcome is even known. It mocks all your striving as pure vanity, just dragging you down with the sheer weight of hypothetical sorrow. Honestly, it's like the voice that convinces you to cancel your gym membership in February because, hey, you're eventually going to age anyway, right? So, how does the soothsayer actually inject this heavy nihilism into the minds of the ambitious?
Chapter 3: The Arithmetic of Nihilism.
Okay, let's dive into this fatalistic math. The soothsayer uses a specific, step-by-step formula to drain your will. Step 1, he asks you to add up all your striving. Step 2, immediately subtract your inevitable ending, meaning, we all end up as dust anyway. Step 3, look at the empty remainder. Speaking in this gentle tone, almost like a lullaby, he uses this arithmetic to mentally exhaust you. It acts as a massive tax levied on your hope before you take a single step toward your goals.
The true danger is in his delivery. He doesn't shout. I mean, a man who shouts his despair can easily be resisted. But the soothsayer speaks his nihilism with the calm, soothing authority of a physician delivering a terminal diagnosis. His melancholia is designed to sound so reasonable, so incredibly inevitable, that it stops sounding like an accusation against life and just becomes a lullaby of nothingness, gently dragging you into total paralysis. He reinforces this paralysis by pointing directly to the pain of ambition. He points to the struggling, crying higher man and asks, "What hope is there?" He's attempting to use your own compassion to justify abandoning the climb. If striving just leads to suffering, he argues, then the only moral choice is to stop striving and just mourn.
But here is where the active force fiercely strikes back. Zarathustra, acting as the active spirit, points out the soothsayer's fatal flaw. He's mistaking the cry of a man climbing for the cry of a man falling. Struggle isn't a sign of failure. It is the raw sound of upward movement. The active spirit absolutely refuses to let the soothsayer's pity rehearse a eulogy for a journey that is still underway. And this conflict, perfectly sets the stage for our ultimate dialectical clash.
Chapter 4. The Sovereign's Gilded Cage.
Here, we pit these two forces against one another in a classic Fichtean dialectic. On one side, we have our active thesis, the sovereign. They're defined by unconditioned freedom, an active zenith, and this endless self-striving for new challenges. Then, right against them, stands the antithesis, the soothsayer, bringing passive nihilism, a suffocating vision of absolute finality, and that fatalistic arithmetic of loss.
Knowing he can't defeat the sovereign with brute force, the soothsayer lays his ultimate psychological snare. He waits for the sovereign to reach peak self-realization, a moment called the Great Noon, where all resistance, or the absolute not I, has been absorbed and completely overcome. That's when the soothsayer slithers in and whispers that this total mastery is actually just a dead end. He frames this absolute victory as a gilded cage of stagnation, basically telling the sovereign that with nothing left to fight, their entire existence is now meaningless.
So the crucial takeaway here is that the soothsayer wants you to believe the story is over the very second you achieve your goals, or sometimes even before you start. He arrives before the ending and reads it aloud, forcing you to live the rest of your life as a passive epilogue. Think about the real-world application for a second. Ask yourself, when do you calculate the end of your own projects, before you even begin them? How often do you exhaust yourself into failure because this fatalistic math is whispering in your ear? To survive this incredibly seductive trap, the sovereign can't just ignore the soothsayer. They have to transform the situation entirely.
Chapter V. Plunging into the Abyss.
To achieve a radical Fichtean synthesis, the sovereign has to completely shatter the soothsayer's downward-angled mirror. Instead of accepting the gilded cage of stagnation, the sovereign reframes the lack of resistance entirely. They don't see the Great Noon as a reason for despair, they see it as a metaphysical crisis that actively demands their unconditioned freedom. They view this peak and the empty vacuum around it as raw fuel for future creation, proving the soothsayer's math fundamentally wrong.
The sovereign doesn't just block out the soothsayer, they actively reject the lullaby of pity. They fully embrace the metaphysical crisis of having nothing left to fight, and then they do something unthinkable. They choose a form of creative self-destruction, willingly plunging back into the abyss. By diving back into the unknown, the sovereign completely shatters the stagnation of the absolute not I.
This dramatic climax reveals the ultimate lesson of our dark fable. Greatness isn't just about reaching the top of the mountain and taking a nap. True sovereignty requires facing the spiritual vacuum, the very void the soothsayer feeds on, and using it as a forge to create entirely new meaning. The sovereign proves that the end of one struggle is simply the raw material for the next, completely and utterly defeating heavy nihilism.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to consider your own striving, your projects, your ambitions. When things get difficult, or when you hit that inevitable plateau, what voice are you actually listening to? Are you embracing the struggle of the climb, using the unknown as fuel to reconstruct your reality? Or are you letting the soothing lullaby of gravity disguise your despair as pity? Keep that haunting question in mind the next time you face the void, and keep climbing.